Step into the world of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Where the essence of entrepreneurship is unraveled in its most authentic form. Stas Balanevsky serves as your guide on this journey of discovery and inspiration. In each episode, Stas brings together entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds to share their stories. It's not just about their victories, but more about the resilience and adaptability they've shown in the face of adversity. These narratives are more than just stories. They are lessons in courage, determination, and the relentless pursuit of success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, dreaming of launching your first venture, or an established business leader seeking new perspectives, Founders Dinner is your invitation to explore the transformative power of entrepreneurship. And now, without further ado, let's welcome the host of Founders Dinner, Stas Balanevsky.
Welcome to the Founders Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Stas Balanevsky, and I have the pleasure of having Zach Schneider as my guest today. Sir, how are you, Zach?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Full disclosure, I've run into Zach here and there for the better part of half a dozen years. So you never know where this conversation will veer, but I'm sure it'll end up in a good spot. So stick with us. But for the benefit of our listeners, I'd love to start with you, your entrepreneurial journey, right? Who are you? Where have you been? Where are you headed?
Yeah, I started off as an entrepreneur mostly because I couldn't get an internship at the young age of about 19. So I started my first company then, working freelance with a bunch of other kids from my class. And then that grew till I was about 26, exited that at 26 with a little bit of profits, which was fantastic. And then grew through that process, went and worked for someone else for a short period of time at Crowley Webb and Associates, and moved through there for 2 years and then went back to doing it for myself. And that was 15 years ago. And there's been a number of other companies that we've started and sold or abandoned and throughout that process. So all of them I learned from.
That's amazing. What was the first venture at 19?
I started a company called Schneider Digital, and we developed websites, and we ended up doing a pretty good job of it. We rewrote Movable Type, what at the time was a publishing platform that was written in .NET, and we rewrote the software to be PHP based, and then sold it back to them. And then they brought us on as kind of a specialty implementation shop of their software. So we ended up working with brands like Boeing and developing intranets and stuff like that. I think I was like 20 years old. Yeah.
That's wild. Good for you.
Yeah, it was fun.
I did not know that part of your history. I thought you're always an agency guy. I didn't think you were a tech platform guy too.
No, I started in tech. Yeah, software development.
Is that your background? Are you a code guy?
I am a code guy. Yeah, that's how I started. Went to art school, but transferred out of art school and went to Canisius for digital media, where I started programming.
Wow. That's so cool. My first business was also in the publishing space.
In publishing solely in the software development?
No, in the actual physical space. I bought my first Mac when I was 13 with all my bar mitzvah money. And started a company called Freelance Associates back in the day. Did the Buffalo Bills media guide it was Chris Buying design back in the day. Right?
Nice.
And, I was 13. It was wild.
Yeah. At that point, I was doing mostly landscaping for all the neighborhood, which was honestly probably, if you go back further, that is probably how I started. And if I stuck with that, I'd probably be even more lucrative today. That's quite the business, but yeah.
It is. Yeah, I have a couple of clients that are in that game. It's really cool. So you're a born entrepreneur.
Yeah, unfortunately. It is to my wife's dismay. I
Well, you
can't
know
help
what?
myself.
It's funny. I've had a couple of guys on the podcast that have said, and like to a man, have said the reason I'm successful is because my wife supports me.
Yep.
Not supports me like she's the breadwinner of the family, but supports me as in, okay, so that's another one of your dumb ideas. That's great. Not a worry. One of them will hit.
Yeah, she does do that, and she's incredibly supportive. I mean that in all seriousness. And she does know the stakes we're up against every time we do it. So I think the one that I took the biggest risk on was the food manufacturing company, Roost Pierogies.
Yeah.
When we started that, had an incredible trajectory. But COVID, there's no way to pivot around it. They shut down food service, and we were a food service manufacturer and had a food service restaurant. And it's game over, baby. When you're going through capital raises, very few investors were like, yeah, this is a great idea and time to continue investment. So that was really a tough one. And that was the biggest risk. And she knew what the hand that we were playing was. So, but didn't kill us. Just learned a lot from it in the same time.
Yeah. Global pandemics will do that to you. But the beauty of our reality, all of us entrepreneurs, is we're basically cockroaches, right? There's just no killing us.
If you're good, yeah, there's no killing us for sure. We just keep coming at it. That's honestly one of the repeat things that I hear from, how I built this.
Oh,
Which is
Guy Raz's
my
podcast.
favorite podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
One that I listen to a lot while I'm driving. But it's this component of luck for the wins, right? That really the timing and the momentum carried them through, as well as the fact that they just kept trying and trying and trying, whatever it was. Some of them pivot between companies and find one that hits or whatever it is. But yeah, it's fascinating.
I love it. I love it. And so the main idea behind this podcast is to create something that entrepreneurs, both current and future, can give a listen to and learn something, because the guests that I've had have all been willing to share a misstep, tell a story where you're like, yeah, I was pretty sure of XYZ, and yeah, that didn't really work out, and here's what I learned.
Oh God, it would take weeks long to go through all my missteps, but for sure.
Brilliant. Pick one.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we can go back to Ruse, right? I think at the time, what I shouldn't have done is try and operate both businesses. I was running the agency and I was really good at that. And I should have stayed focused on the agency and not started a whole nother company from the ground up. What I should have done is found and continued, which was my kind of ethos when I started, was investments into other startups.
Mm-hmm.
And continued to leverage the agency for equity into others and helped guide them through what we already did well through marketing, advertising, communications, things along those lines, business operations, without getting solely involved in another operation, which really creates issues on both sides. I think my agency suffered during that period of time because I didn't have the true time and focus necessary to make everyone feel like I was 100% in it, because I wasn't, right? And even though I was running with a partner, that's really tough. And then I think the food manufacturing suffered because I wasn't 100% in that either. My time was divided. And I think if you are going to be really successful in a company, you until it's off and running on its own and fully operating, I think you have to be 100% in it and live and breathe it. And it requires all of you and then some.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk a lot in EOS about core focus.
Yep.
Right. Your purpose, cause, and passion, and then your niche.
For sure.
The example we always give is Orville Redenbacher, right? I'm like, okay, what's his niche? And everyone's like, popcorn. You know why everybody knows that? It's because he could probably have made potato chips, but he didn't.
Oh, yeah. But he didn't. Right. Exactly.
That's
And
the
it's a big enough market. Yeah. I think most of the wins that I've seen have been really successful, especially in the startup space, that where I've seen the biggest wins, both friends and personally, have been a small niche, big market acquisition piece of it. Look at things like ACV auctions, right?
oh my God.
Not a kind of an unknown little market and not a ton of players, but they took a good chunk of that market in a very short period of time through transformative technology. You're able to do that for sure.
It's interesting. I had Seth Green on my podcast recently. Do you know Seth?
I don't know.
He's awesome. I would, of the two marketers from Williamsville named Seth,
The
yeah,
two.
he's right there. And I asked him what the one biggest piece of advice would be. And he said, niche down. Like, pick the niche most specifically and then pick the product. And I was like, shoot, I would like when I started my CRM business, when I started my CMO business, I was like, here's a product that I can offer, and now I can go offer it to a niche. And he's like, find the niche, find the super narrow niche, and then develop the offering. You're the second person that's open with niche.
Yeah, it's the truth. I see it over and over again. I found a niche because we were doing work for a client, a large dairy cooperative, and they were about to lose a huge client in Walmart because they couldn't service them correctly. And before they had the opportunity to do that, we were brought in and developed a merchandising program for them, where we invented software that would then oversee, create accountability for the part-time people in stores. We pulled their sales teams out and we created a merchandising component, and we did all the direct store distribution logistics for them. And they ended up becoming the private label provider for that because of the relationship and how strong and how well they service that account. And I don't think, again, super small niche, right? We're not trying to be everything and everything to distribute the product, but really small niche. That company turned profit for 4 years, and then we exited at the exact right time. And so we made money from month 3 through year 3, and then turned it for a return on a profit. So
good for you.
Yeah, that's a great success story when you look at things like that. I wish I could rinse and repeat that one 10 times.
I bet. So you get involved way, way deeper than a standard marketing company or an advertising agency.
I think there is an appreciation because of how involved we are with some of these relationships, where we're sitting with the executive team and we're understanding where they're trying to go with business, and we're seeing where their issues lie, that there are times and opportunities where we can step in from a business case and help well beyond what you would classify as advertising agency sort of business. And that we set up solely as its own company, knowing that we most likely would have to just sell it back to them once it gets fully operational. But it was something that, as a company, that large cooperative just wasn't ready to do internally, right? Nor did they have the know-how or the manpower or the resources to do it. So we were the best fit.
That's really amazing. What a cool story. I hadn't realized that you do that sort of stuff and get that granular with your customers.
Yeah, when we sold that, we had 60 employees across 3 states doing all the direct store distributions for Walmarts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You're still plugged in with the food buyers at Walmart?
Well, they change often, but yeah. And direct store distribution is unique, right? It's not your main buyers through Walmart. It's all your really local products. And Walmart doesn't have too many local products per se. But when it comes to like milk and perishables, you only have a 500-mile radius in which you can buy from before expiration dates reach a point of scary level and you have to move product really quickly. we were able to help optimize that. And then as we developed the software and we created further implements into it, weather dependent ordering scenarios. So we were using snowstorms and things like that to predict panic purchases in Walmarts for dairy sections, for milk and things like that. So we would have extra things ordered from factory in events of weather scenarios.
Look at that. The Buffalo boy bringing it home.
Yeah, it was fun stuff.
How many times have you seen that?
Yeah. And
No
it was a
bread.
huge impact too, right? Because you'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, of course, we could move a lot of milk. But then people are like, oh, the shelves were bare. I couldn't get milk. I couldn't get whatever. So as we built out that merchandising software, our merchandisers were doing the orders for Walmart. And we were reducing the amount of dumping of product too. So our goal was to reduce the amount of dump as well as increase the amount of sales. So by leveraging weather and having people there on a regular cadence and restocking shelves, because Walmart doesn't do that. Those are all key components of how we improved the relationships.
So were you using a forecast API or you had manual input that that a storm's a brewing?
We took a software solution that a third party had built that was relatively inexpensive, and then we took that code set and we modified it and further involved like predictive analysis for weather.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun because one of the agencies that I know that does the advertising for a local ski area, their advertising gets turned on and turned off based on the forecast.
Yeah, as it should.
Right? Yeah. Nobody cares if it's green in your backyard, even though it's only 50 minutes away.
But I would argue that I think if it's green in your backyard, some people don't know that there is snow.
Oh yeah, no, there's a
Yeah.
whole separate thing for that. So your always on advertising is there for that for sure. But to drive membership,
Oh yeah, for membership for
yeah,
sure.
you have to be living in a snow globe to really think about how great it would be for the rest of your life versus
Yeah.
this weekend. It's just different psychology.
Yeah, our current advertising platform, we've really taken to another level. We partnered with a tech company out of California and found an integrated approach to all the walled gardens. So Google and Meta, and then your programmatic buying, and then tied it all into one massive AI-based programmatic allocation of funding, and then a reporting structure that gives you like updates on everything within like hours of all your ads running, which is really fun way to do things.
That's awesome. One-stop shop.
Yeah, it was something that I knew we needed to have done. It was just taking too much human resource time and to manage all those different environments and go into campaigns and have hands-ons.
Yeah.
Working with them to develop this was a huge advantage for us at the agency.
That's awesome. And right, the moment you copy paste, there's your data's bad.
Oh yeah. And it has to be really, really strong, but it still allows us to modify campaigns and make changes in real time, which is the most important part with digital buying.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That sounds to me like you're cracking the people code a little bit.
Trying to. There's still quite a few human resources involved, but there's massive efficiencies and that are built into that sort of an environment for sure.
So how do all of these different ideas, right? You're a visionary in the truest sense, right? I mean, you are. You go after lots of stuff. Have you developed a process now in being able to sort of vet ideas and opportunities to see if you're going to give them some time or if you're just going to say no to them?
Yeah. And we also try and stick to a long range strategic plan. A lot of these fit into where do I want to be 10 years from now? So I really look out in advance and say, hey, and then reverse engineer the steps to do that. Also understanding the constraints of our bandwidth and how much I can allow people to hate me because I'm going to institute so much change before they're just like enough with this guy. So I think that's how we get to where we are today. I know I can only push people so far. in a given year with some major initiatives, right? So in your world, I set those rocks, but all those rocks add up to like the end, the 10-year strategic plan for where I need to go.
Awesome.
That's the key to it. Yeah.
So everything that you
My
do,
management team is, hey, please don't do both of these in the same year. Then I readjust accordingly.
well, that's nice. But then every single thing gets put through the 10-year target test.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Okay.
definitely the benchmark for sure.
What is your 10-year target? What's your future? Where are you going?
So right now we're looking to 5x total agency billings, which I think is more than realistic, honestly. I've actually thought about making it more aggressive, but I think when we look at the revenue per employee and some kind of key metrics to all of it, automation, additional service lines and services that we would then have in-house as opposed to outside and vendor-based, and the ability that we'll need to grow with standard operating procedures being fundamental through like integrating that with training and everything else in order to scale that quickly. That's kind of, I felt, getting the foundation built over the next 2 years and then spending 8 really on strategic growth initiatives for scalability is going to be paramount. So that's how we came up with that number. So we'll be doing about 30 million in agency billings by then.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into it over the past year or two, just before I
Clearly.
kind of just set that goal.
Well, and the nice thing is you're not a manufacturing company.
That's exactly right. But it's also based on then, as much as everyone likes to be like, oh, we do value billing, we do whatever billing. At an agency, it is tied to time and human resource.
Right.
Unless you can productize certain aspects. And the way that we bill media is different also, right? Because it's based on percent, but those percents come back to, again, overhead costs and human resource. So it's tough to, it just involves hiring and staffing people, and everyone's going to need to make more money. That's the one rising cost that we have here at the agency. I think 70% of my 60 to 70% of my overhead is human resource. So.
Yep. A friend of mine always says 83% of all the problems in your business are people problems. And the remaining 13% are generally tied to people. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, that's why I love this industry too, because I've worked in the restaurant space and I've worked in factories and I've worked in all the rest of it. Agency people are way more mature than your average bear, and it's a lot easier to manage. Yeah.
No, they're great. Agency people are awesome. I have lots of agency clients and it's super fun. And the beauty of it is, as you're able to productize some of the stuff, then you can actually really get the highest and best use out of your people.
For sure.
Because getting a seasoned media executive to be like flighting ads is
never going to happen.
Yeah, it's the dumbest thing you can be doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have to.
Yeah. It's unique, right? But that space is changing so much. I think we're at a time where we're seeing the demise of even network TV. One point radio was the hottest thing going, and before that, papers. And we've already seen the death of the newspaper, and radio's changed entirely as it was. And I think now with streaming stations and free stations and the way that TVs are tied in with smart TVs, the networks are really feeling it more than they ever have. And it's changing the whole type of broadcast.
So you've got the second screen problem and all of that stuff. I don't know did you know that I worked at the Buffalo News?
When did you work at the News?
I was their director of sales for 5 weeks.
For 5 weeks? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
At what phase of the Buffalo News, what iteration of it was this?
Before the new acquisition.
So before Lee Enterprises.
Yeah. So it was still Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
And I was there for a little bit and I went heavy programmatic and got an IO that was gigantic, and it didn't work out.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It was my first ever corporate job, right? I'd been a number one or a number two from the age of 13 until into my 40s. And then I took a job at a company that had lost or was in the process of losing two huge revenue streams of
Yeah.
subscriptions and advertisements. And I
Yeah.
was like the new guy with the shiny thing coming in with a ton of experience and contacts back in the digital marketing space, digital advertising space. So it was an oil and water situation. Really nice people, but the business model for me just didn't work.
Yeah. I just don't think it worked for them either.
No, it didn't. They ended up selling, and
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting the new publisher a little bit. And what a smart guy. Just really cool concept, making big moves, move the offices, was like unapologetic about making really nice business decisions.
Yeah. That being said, they're still just taking a beating like there's no tomorrow.
It's What was the line in Ford versus Ferrari? If Henry Ford asked his clients what they wanted, they all would have said a faster horse. Like the world has changed completely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I still get paper copies of Business First showing up, and I'm like, cool. I don't know how many other people do, but I still like
All of us do. And I only subscribe to the digital one, yet I still get 3 copies of the paper one. I don't know why. Yeah.
That's a nice surprise.
I know. I don't, they just keep sending them to the office. So,
Well, that's nice.
yeah, I guess this.
It's crazy. So what are you doing to stay on the leading edge, right? The whole thing is changing. Nobody wants to go the way of the dodo bird. And as afraid of AI as many people are, what are you doing to stay on the edge?
We're constantly exploring new tools, operations. We're really, really at the bleeding edge of artificial intelligence and where we can leverage it and streamline things internally. It doesn't write the creative. It doesn't do that aspect for us, but usage within Photoshop, streamlining a lot of that stuff. What I found is that everyone is, oh my God, it's going to make our life so much more efficient. It's going to make our life so much better. But then we just take on so much more.
Right.
So it's really not saving human resource any. It's just making everyone take on so much more than they already are. So it's interesting. I don't know how it entirely looks at the end of all of this. Will my industry be radically changed in the next 5 years? 100%. It's going to be more nimble, more efficient teams with other tools to take a lot of the busy work off and communications, I would assume, just client communications, things along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
High level strategy, relationships, trust building, understanding audience demographics. That's still going to be high level strategy and execution from agencies. But media landscape's changing daily. And that's how we really communicate, right? So
Right.
as you get more and more involved with, I was reviewing a startup this morning I sit on the advisory board for Armory Square Ventures, and it's an artificial intelligence buying machine that basically sits over Facebook and Meta. And basically you put in your audience demographics and criteria and your budget, and it just takes all the same rates and does everything an agency would, except there's no people involved, which is fascinating. And if something like that does work and can show the same results, they can play the cost efficiency game in the long run.
Yeah.
and really push us out. So constantly exploring how things are getting used. I mean, just video and the way that's produced with advents like artificial intelligence and how we can capture things and post-production work. There's huge efficiencies that we've seen just in the past 2 to 3 years that I would never thought have been possible. Drone footage alone. Think about when you and I started, you needed a helicopter and a pilot's license and an all-day shoot, and you're cutting film and tape it back together, and the time necessary to produce content and put stuff out now is done in a day off of a phone that you can hold in your product at better quality than we could possibly imagine.
It was insane. I was in Italy a few weeks ago, and I brought my younger son's drone because I just wanted to fly it. And the countryside is beautiful. And I was talking to the hostess at our villa, and I said, "Do you have drone footage of the villa?" She goes, "Well, someone did come out once. It was a cloudy day, and it wasn't great." I'm like, you know what? Let me see what I can do. And I just flew the thing around for 5 minutes and got lots of cool framing. I'm sure 8% is good as what your team could do. Maybe 6% is good.
It doesn't matter.
Right. I gave her 5 minutes of footage.
Right.
And said, your people should be able to cut this into something meaningful. And I came back and there were 2 bottles of wine and a little sign that said for the drone footage. And I was like, okay, I had fun flying the drone. All I did was sit for 3 minutes for it to upload. And I got 2 bottles of wine out of it. That was awesome. And she's going to be able to use the footage. And but that barrier of you have to get the chopper pilot to show up and scare all the cows. Whereas now it's just a buzzy little thing and we're done.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago. And you brought it in your carry-on and popped it up in the sky and had aerial footage in that period of time and sent it to her digitally. Like that was unheard of when we started in the industry in the space. And it's fascinating. I'm installing ChatGPT for my kids to use as their search engines because it's just 10 times more efficient than even Google, right? Why would you go to Google to ask a question when you have to go and sort through all these different pages and websites to hope that you find something that's relevant, as opposed to just asking a question and having the entire thing explained to you? And if it's too complicated, say, dumb it down like I'm a child. It's like amazing.
So what crystal ball, what does that do to SEO?
Right? SEO will be a thing of the past. It really will, because I think websites in their entirety will change incredibly. I think people are looking for answers, not websites. And I think a website will become more of a brochure. I think e-commerce is going to change drastically. I'm seeing a change already.
What do you see?
I'm seeing competition that was never savvy in certain categorical spaces become more savvy and do it. And Google's only incentive is to get pricing higher so that people are paying more. So it's increase in what was the only line of revenue or the only marketing that these companies were doing in a very antiquated niche space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like, how come I'm not seeing the return I was before? I'm like, well, all your competition does it now. And they all look the same and they all feel the same and they all have the same keywords and they all have the same SEO and the images are the same. What really differentiates you at that point, right? Why are you going to buy from one to another? And I think that's where it comes from, storytelling. And I think brands need to become their own media companies, right? I think as a brand, as a company, if you're not constantly producing content and telling stories and being honest about who you are and getting to the differentiator between you and your competition, then why is it any different for a consumer?
Great point. That's interesting. There are lots of stories with early entrepreneurs, early innovators that did that, right? Like you look at Patagonia, you think Yvon Chouinard. He's a dude that said, "This is who we are. This is what we do, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to sell you any more vests, to the finance bros, and this is what we do now."
I think he did all right in the exit of all of that. If you go back and you use that as a case study, I think it's one of the greatest brand stories of all time.
I think so too. And he gave it to the planet.
Yep, for sure.
But come on, that's amazing. It makes you want to go out and buy a Patagonia piece.
Yep.
Because adding to that, it's really well-made stuff, right? Like it would fall flat if it was like a really great story, but like not a warm puffy. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's awesome. So here you are on the leading edge, 5Xing your agency.
Yeah, well, we're still small potatoes compared to the big ones out there.
So what? You do
Yeah.
awesome work with great clients.
And that's really it. I think the key to all of our success is just being really, really picky about who we work with. I think this year alone, we've turned down about probably over $1 million of work so far in the first quarter because it just wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right culture. They didn't check all the boxes in terms of how we're going to be successful for them. And without that, we can't be successful, right? So what's the point? It's just a check, and that doesn't get us anywhere at the end of the day.
That's a very mature company and a very good outlook that's going to serve you well.
I could never have done this 10 years ago. I couldn't have
Of course
done
not.
this 5 years ago. But I
Well,
think
it's a luxury you've worked to be able to afford.
that's right. And if I were to say when was the point you really made it, it was when we could choose who we worked with. And I didn't have to scramble to say yes to everybody. And that for us to succeed as an agency, if we don't have incredible clients who have the exact same mindset and direction and ambition and trust and respect that we are going to give them, there's no way we'll succeed. It's just we'll wind up without a portfolio piece that anyone is happy with. They'll never refer us to another company. And yeah, sure, we made some money, but what good is that in the time being? My employees will be burnt out. My employees will be disheartened, and it'll kill their creative juices and their mindset. But with the right client, man, that all changes. Like it's magical.
That's awesome. Is there any chance that had you started saying no back when you really needed the cash, you would have been able to get to this place quicker?
Absolutely.
Because I'm looking at my own journey and I'm thinking back to implementations that I took that I, on paper, was like, this is not going to be great.
When I took the business over from my partner last year, it gave me the ability to do everything that I just knew that we needed to do. And the first thing I did was fire the clients that were holding us back. And within 2 days, we refilled them all with clients who appreciated us and have propelled us exponentially further than we have before. We've had our best year on record in 15 years this year.
In the midst of a slowing economy.
Correct. And the only differentiator is with change in leadership.
Good for you, Zach. Congratulations, man. Because it's not been easy.
No, it's not an easy, nothing that we do is easy.
No. No, it's not.
I think it's harder to do when you have polar opposite 50-50 partners, right?
Yeah.
And Greg was an exceptional partner, and I will preface that. Like, I value him as a very close friend and a confidant and someone I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. But I think he was so conservative and so nervous about change or pushing things and doing those sorts of things that it really just froze us from making a lot of decisions that need to be done in terms of internal culture and client mix and taking opportunities and educated risks that I would have done all day, you know.
Well,
We are here today, so that's fine.
You are. That's great.
Yeah.
Man, Zach, I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate the stories. I'm sure that as entrepreneurs listen to these, they'll want to get in touch. Would that be okay?
Yeah, always. I'm always here for anyone that you refer, man.
Especially Right Fit Brands.
Especially Right Fit Brands. But yeah, honestly, and you know that one of my passions is helping everyone get started, right? So that's why I'm an EIR and involved in Cultivator and Launch. And I just want to see everyone win. It's my only goal.
It's an awesome goal. So great to be in your village, my man.
Awesome. Well, you're the best, dude.
Thanks.
I hope.
And with that, this concludes this week's episode of the Founders Dinner Podcast. Those looking to connect with Zach, his links are going to be in the description. And this is Stas Balanevsky signing off. I'll see you all next week. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you. Have a great day.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Once again, we've journeyed through the inspiring and challenging world of entrepreneurship with Stas Balanevsky, uncovering stories that illuminate the resilience and adaptability at the heart of success. Each narrative shared today is a testament to the unyielding spirit of our entrepreneurial guests, providing lessons in courage and determination. We hope these stories have not only entertained, but also inspired you. Whether you're taking the first steps in your entrepreneurial journey or are a seasoned leader in the business world, Founders Dinner is more than just a podcast. It's a community of learning, inspiration, and connection. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insightful episodes and join our vibrant LinkedIn community to continue the conversation, share experiences, and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. Until next time, keep embracing the entrepreneurial journey. This is Stas Balanevsky, thanking you for being a part of the Founders Dinner family. See you at the next dinner.